Hello, I am Cheeky Diamondz, a company member with Novelties Theater, and today I'm chatting with Mix Pucks Aplenty about Fig by Dani Janae. So, known as the They, Them, Yes Queen of Burlesque, creator and co-producer of What the Funk, and the femme daddy your mom didn't know to warn you about, welcome, Mix Pucks Aplenty.
Hello.
So let's talk about your poem, Fig. So why this poem?
Well, I really resonate with the kind of the longing and the hunger aspect of this poem. It's a relatively short poem, but it gets right to it. And as a non-binary person that has been socialized as a woman most of my life, there's a lot of work that I had to go through to kind of recognize my queerness and recognize my attraction to vulva havers. And even now to this day, like there is definitely still kind of like that awkwardness around communicating that desire to be with femme people. And so this poem really hit a nerve.
All right. How did you first encounter it? What was your first introduction? And how long has this piece really been with you?
So this piece has been with me since almost the start of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. I was doing some research on a website called Autostraddle, specifically looking up some information for a podcast that I do called Sexuality. And I really like this website. It has a lot of really fun information about human sexuality, queer theory, gender identity and expression. So it was really kind of stumbled upon it that way.
All right. And we were chatting a little bit about this. The writer, Dani Janae, are they a contributor to that website or do they own that site?
So they're a contributor to that website. They are a creative writer based out of Pittsburgh, PA. And they actually wrote an article about poetry written by lesbians. And one of the last poems that was included was their own, which I thought was really funny. And then I read it and I was just like, this is really good. I love this.
Dani Janae is a poet and writer living in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Her poems often address her intersecting identities as a Black queer woman. So, let's talk about queer theory. Critic David Halperin suggests that the queer disrupts normalcy and transforms what can count as knowledge. To queer anything means centering queer perspectives and disrupting ideas like heteronormativity or cisnormativity. In literary study, this can mean examining works by queer writers, like taking a class that's a deep dive into Gore Vidal and James Baldwin's writing, or it could mean reading works by canonical authors through a queer lens, like re-examining the romantic relationships in Shakespeare's comedies or the single-gender worlds of Herman Melville's seafaring novels. According to scholar Amy Tweedy, desire is a queer methodology. That is, writing about desire as a queer person is an action that transforms a reader's knowledge of desire itself. So when we read poems of lesbian poets like Audre Lorde, Cherry Moraga, or Dani Janae, we transform our own understanding of desire as readers, queering it.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about the artistic process. So how did you approach translating this from a poem into a burlesque piece? Tell me a little bit about that.
This was harder than I thought it was going to be in terms of like narrowing down like what the vision was going to be. And I figured that I was going to have figs included. Poems called Figs, it talks about figs. But I really wanted to approach it in a way that felt very satisfying for folks watching, but also didn't feel contrived. I went through a lot of figs because I purchased some figs to start to do this, and figs go bad really fast, and like they're almost out of season. So I had to throw away like $10 worth of figs because I didn't move quickly enough to film, and so $20 worth of figs went into the making of this this piece. But it was really interesting to be able to just sit and like just artistically film figs for a while, and like, drizzle honey on the figs, touch the figs. It was just kind of a really it turned into kind of a more of a sensual experience than I thought it was going to be when I'm trying to create art. And it was really neat to kind of go from like, let me just go to like this base level of enjoying the fruit and kind of seeing what that's all about. Because I didn't really have a whole lot of exposure to figs growing up besides fig Newtons. And I don't like those. So this was kind of interesting. And one of the things I learned from this, that figs are absolutely delicious and very tasty. So that was part of my process, was discovering that figs are in fact really, really yummy.
I completely agree. I love that. Well, and so this piece is, I don't want to say it's just like it's a specific medium, because like it is a burlesque piece, but it's also like a short art film and like an R&B music video. So could you tell me more about choosing that medium, how you did it through different formatting, different visuals, and did you edit it yourself? Tell me more about that.
Yes. So with the pandemic, one of the things that I think a lot of folks that are a part of the burlesque community are discovering is that we're picking up some new skills. And one of the skills I've picked up through this, through kind of like trial by fire, has been learning how to edit music videos. I have someone that goes through and typically fine tunes it, and that person wasn't available for this. So it really was like me sitting down and really getting into it. But I'm really glad that you picked up on this 90s R&B vibe. It definitely has kind of this like TLC creep with the satiny look to it. And it also just kind of reminds me of like SWV, kind of that vibe, right? And so one of the things that's been really neat during COVID and seeing the art that people produce, people have been making what is functionally music videos. And I love that. I've always had a hard time watching recorded burlesque acts, with the stationary camera, and because typically the performer is not engaging with the camera. I know that 9 times out of 10 when I'm performing, I've had no idea where the camera was in the building. I just knew that I got a video. And so you don't get that intimacy, and you don't really get that energy exchange from those videos. And what I've noticed with some of the work that people have been putting out during COVID and with this piece, one of the things I wanted to create was this idea of voyeurism and exhibitionism, so that folks are getting to see something that's really, really intimate, and having that moment of like, I don't think this person actually realizes I'm watching this. And then you have these moments where I look directly into the camera and you get kind of caught enjoying this, and which is something that is actually like kind of part of the tease and denial thing that we do in burlesque anyway, is this idea that like folks are getting caught being naughty by looking at something they're not supposed to be seeing. And then we give them an opportunity to kind of release some of that tension. And so they get to sit with that and have a moment with that. And I think that's really neat. And something that like I miss from performing live is kind of catching people feeling a certain way about a thing that's happening. And then you make eye contact with them and they're like, oh no. And you're like, no, yes, you should be liking this. This is what it's for.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. And I think it really comes through. And so we'll be able to see this. So last question before we go and watch is, what is your favorite line from your piece, from Fig?
Oh, it's the very, very last line is like, it's just choice. It's all I can do is hunger. And I am just a big fan of longing, um, pining, and I feel like that's a big part of like femme queer culture is just the pining and the longing. And I really wish that another femme would realize that I'm flirting with them. So there's this kind of this there's something that really hits true about that. I always say that I know for a fact that like sexuality is not a choice, because I'm still attracted to men, and I really wish that I wasn't. Like, I wish I was just attracted to women, and or at least like femme-identified folks.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm still attracted to men, so it's one of those things where like there is definitely a hunger to connect more in a romantic and sexual way with femme-identified humans. But there's just I feel like it's definitely like the calling card of being queer and femme is just this awkwardness of connection. It's this awkwardness of, are you actually flirting with me? Are we actually on a date? I've been on surprise dates with other queer femmes more times than I care to count, where we didn't quite realize that we're on a date, but then like we're like, I think it is a date. Then like that is just some weird awkwardness that I'll never understand, but I definitely know that it is definitely part of like the queer femme experience.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing to try to have to navigate. That way you think about certain other groups of people don't have to do that, because they'll just come out and ask, and you're like, there's a line, there's a balance. And then when you have
Absolutely.
no idea, you're just like, oh, surprise.
Surprise date. Yeah.
Well, I'm going to surprise date you right now, and we're going to watch your piece.
Yay.
So without further ado, here's Mixed A'Plenty's piece. Does your piece have a name, or is it just also Fig?
It just figs. This is Fig.
Yeah, welcome.
Fig and Fig is Fig. Yeah, Fig. I do wonder what this author would think about the fact that I was inspired by their poem. I think about that, especially since they are Black and queer. I wonder if they would be flattered. I wonder if they would even care. I wonder about that. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious too. And in the age of all this online things that we're doing, what do you see with this piece? Like if it were a bigger, like I know you're a producer and a creator of all things. So like if this were to become a show or the piece were to inspire something bigger, what else do you think this could be artistically?
I think that I would love to see a larger show about femme relationship dynamics. Because it's something that we're like, just queer femmes, we can all universally agree that flirting with each other and making these connections is difficult, but we still haven't figured out the way to not make it difficult and come together. And I think a lot of that again is based off of like the femme identified folks or that present femme. We know what it feels like to have unwanted sexual advances thrown our way. And so I feel like a lot of that navigation that we're doing is to not come across as predators. And because of that, we have gone we've gone so far back that like it's just kind of this awkward shuffle, and folks will actually be in a relationship with someone and not realize it until 9 months later, like they've actually been in a relationship with someone. So I would love to maybe do a full show with queer femmes of all flavors and varieties of what their queer journey is, what their experience is, what does sex feel like for them? What is it for them? I think that a lot of the work that I've been doing during this pandemic has really been centered around pleasure and embodiment. And I would really love to do like a larger show that really kind of touches on that. And how do we fix the hunger?
Yeah, that's beautiful. And that's a good like exploration and different form of exploration that isn't really talked about and explored. Like it's sometimes explored in a singular sense, but not throughout like an entire evening of events and such.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for chatting with me today. I want to give you a chance to plug anything because I know you are a very, very busy individual. So tell us where we can find you next, what we should be listening to, what's going on.
So I have a podcast I co-host with a really good friend of mine and colleague called Sexuality. It's this sexual education and queer theory podcast. And it's like my baby. It's beautiful. We talk about all kinds of things. We've interviewed already a couple of folks from the burlesque community. Our very first interview was actually with Miss Brickhouse, who is like queer femme magic, all on her own. And then in terms of solo projects, we're in the process of booking all of our headliners and feature performers for What the Funk and All People of Color Burlesque Festival. Which is going to be happening in August of 2021. But, now's the time to kind of get started on that. So that's what's coming up. And then in January, I have several shows, but one of them in particular is called Carnal Fete. And it is a very sensual and decadent show. I wouldn't be surprised if Fig makes an appearance in that show, but it's going to be in kind of mid-January. And I'm really, really excited about that show.
Yeah, awesome. Well, now I'm all excited about that show.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much again for this interview with me.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thanks for watching Ekphrasis, a production of Novelties Theatre. If you enjoyed this episode, We invite you to make a tax-deductible donation through the link in the video description. And don't forget to like and subscribe below so you don't miss our next episode featuring Knox Falls and In the Desert by Stephen Crane.